Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Pro Rig segment. Our guest today is a 16-year professional tournament career Bass Tour angler. He's a 4-time tour level winner. He's got 27 top 10 finishes. He goes by the nickname of Boom Boom. And before we go any further, Fred, I'm going to ask you to tell us, how did you get that nickname?
You know, it's funny. First, I like to tell people I've been called a lot worse. But no, really, Boom Boom kind of came up back in 2007. I was picked as a dark horse to win a major event with Bassmasters. And Mark Jeffries and Harold the Legend Allen, they picked me to win that event kind of as a dark horse. And they said, Fred Boom Boom Roumbanis is going to win. He's going to make that top 10. And out goes the lights, kind of like Boom Boom Mancini, the boxer. Okay. And sure enough, I won the tournament and it stuck. So very grateful for that, because since then I've been able to use it to my advantage. You know, branding is a huge deal in this sport. And I've created a logo, and it's on rods, lures, and all kinds of stuff. So it's been great.
We are talking to Fred Boom Boom Roumbanis. Did I say that correctly, or is it Roumbanis?
Roumbanis.
Roumbanis. Fred Boom Boom Roumbanis. Don't worry, they're going to get that right. We're going to talk about swim jig fishing today, and I really appreciate you coming on to talk to us about this. You know, for me, jig fishing is something we do in deep water, in heavy brush. We might flip a jig or punch a jig sometimes, but the idea of swimming a jig is really foreign to me. I know it's something I got to learn. I know it's something that people are doing. What is your take on swim jig fishing?
You know, it's funny because I grew up in California, and back then we didn't throw swim jigs. My first win at La Crosse, Wisconsin, a shallow water river, the Mississippi River, it was dominated by swim jig fishermen, while I won it throwing a topwater frog. And so I was able to, after that event, kind of trade my techniques with the frog with some of the locals on their techniques with the swim jig. And I learned so much about it. Basically, it's a bait that you burn across the surface. And you can use your rod tip to your advantage. You can shake it and, make it move. It's almost like throwing a frog, but you're moving it quickly, and you got to keep your rod tip up, where if you're throwing a frog, you're working your rod tip down, because you're trying to push down the water. Here, you're trying to rise the water. So it's just a great way. I love swim jigs, one, for covering water. I go to a lot of lakes. Now I've been doing it for 16 years. I've been to most of the lakes, but every now and then, Major League Fishing, we show up at a new body of water, and I always have a swim jig tied on, because you can cover so much water so fast, and fish, they react on it. It's very similar to throwing a spinner bait or something like a lipless crankbait or chatterbait, which chatterbait's kind of a swim jig as it is. I mean, a lot of people call them bladed jigs. It's a very similar deal. It's just got more vibration. A swim jig's subtle but natural.
Okay, so what you just said there, it kind of like, all of a sudden my mind opened up. So I like to cover water with crankbaits, shallow water, shallow water crankbaits or deep crankbaits. I like to cover water, especially when I'm clueless, which is often. But to me, it's the one place I can't throw crankbaits is in a lot of heavy grass. I'm guessing you can probably throw a swim jig in situations like that.
Exactly. I mean, that's the benefit of a swim jig versus a crankbait. You got treble hooks you're going to drag through and get snagged up in grass. A lot of the fisheries, when you leave California, it's amazing how many fisheries that your boat will be kicking up mud and you still can't throw all the way to the bank. In California, we've got a lot more deep banks, and you're typically fishing that 4 to 6 foot of water, even if, or deeper, right? But out here, you're fishing a foot of water or less, and you're trying to throw a bait as far as possible. Well, there's very few baits that you can throw other than a frog and a swim jig or a weedless swim bait and get that kind of distance to where the fish really live, because your boat won't go back that far, and still cover it and catch fish. And a swim jig, to me, is the perfect way to cover those shallow flats, like I said, through cover, vegetation. I love doing it around shallow boat docks. Even some deep boat docks work great with it if the bait's present and high in the water column. So it's like I said, it's a technique that I I could definitely live without when I was in California, but cannot live without out here. You know, living in Arkansas now, living on the Arkansas River, you know, any of these shallow water rivers. And then what's cool is when I came out this way and lived in Oklahoma a few years, I went back to the deltas and started catching them on a swim jig. I'm like, why didn't I throw this back in the reeds when I was younger? You know, it just wasn't something I thought of. So yeah, it will work in California. It's just something that doesn't really come to mind. You know, you've got the Delta, you've got Clear Lake, you've got plenty of lakes where you got reeds, or you got, you know, even like if you went to Havasu or something, you could throw a swim jig way back up in there and work it through, because it does go through cover nice. And yeah, I mean, it's an excellent way to catch fish. And really, when a fish grabs it, you hook them. It's got a very good hookup ratio. I'd say even better than a frog.
Okay, now you just touched on something. I wanted to ask you about the water column. Swim jigged in your mind, is primarily a shallow water technique then?
Yeah, for the most part, yes. I do like it in shallow water. I like it in pre-spawn. You know, when I first pick up a swim jig, it's going to be as those fish start moving those flats, start moving shallow to spawn. And it really just allows me to get where they live and where they're trying to spawn a lot better than most lures. So yeah, shallow water for sure. And I mean, when I say shallow, you may be fishing a hole that you can't get your boat back to, but you're throwing back into it. And it may only be 2 foot, 3 foot, but your boat's wedged on a foot. That's just how a lot of these rivers are. This, you know, you get floods and stuff, sandbars create basically an area that really blocks your boat from getting into these sweet spots. So a swim jig, if you put the right trailer on it, you can bomb it a mile.
It's best around cover, best around heavy cover then, right?
Mm-hmm. And you can skip it around boat docks, laydowns. Yeah, there's different trailers that you're going to want to put on them. From a swim bait paddle trailer, like I like the Optimum Baits Double Diamond. That actually here at Lake Darnell, where I live now, in 2008, I was second the first day actually throwing a double diamond on the back of a black and blue swim jig. And man, I had my power poles down. I think it was the first year I personally got power poles in my boat. And I remember never moving my boat all day and catching like 40 fish. It was insane. Yeah, it had a really big bag, and ended up 8th in the tournament, but majority of my fish came on a swim jig.
So now with the trailer, you mentioned that Optimum trailer that you're talking about. You did say Optimum, right?
Yeah, Optimum Baits Double Diamond.
Yeah. Now, is that a twin? Is that a twin tail, or is it a swimmer?
No, it's a swimmer, but it's got a diamond shape to the belly, and it allows it to really rock back and forth. So not only are you getting that paddle action, you're getting that rocking action. So it's kind of like 2 actions in one. And then the swim jig that I was throwing was something that I'm reincarnating right now and bringing back to the lineup. So it's been gone for many, many years, and I've been having them made kind of on the down low, and we're finally bringing them out. But we can get into that in a little bit. But yeah, it's that's one of the trailers I really do like. It's a swim bait trailer, and I like that in the pre-spawn. Now, if you're getting in a situation where you want to fish around boat docks or laydowns, I like a crawl trailer as well, and something that kicks. And it could be like a rage crawl. That's a great one. Some of the menace baits they got. I'm not a Strike King sponsor guy, but I do throw a lot of different plastics, and that's one of the great trailers I like on it. A speed crawl by Zoom, if I'm really trying to downsize. And then even a horny toad. Horny toad is one of the greatest swim jig trailers I found coast to coast. It gets big bites. It planes real well. It keeps that bait hovering in that depth. And then a lot of guys, if you're sitting there kind of over floating grass, they want to kind of pop it up and down by using your rod tip. And like a pocket trailer, something that's got kind of 2 little flappy things that you can really make them kick. And that, like in Alabama, that's the way they like to fish it. A lot. And it's over the grass. We have a lot of grass out here called water willow, and it's kind of viney, but it sticks up, and it could be a mat that sticks out 12 feet off the bank, and you could throw it all the way to the bank and work it all the way through and not get hung up, and fish could live anywhere in it and come up and grab it.
Now, do you have a water temperature, like a water temperature that is precise, where you go to swim jigs and maybe where you back off of that because it's too cold?
I do. So in the wintertime, really as things start to warm up early February, late February, it just depends on how the year goes. once that water temperature hits 54 degrees, seems to be the magic number when I'll pick up a swim jig. And I know it sounds real early, but these fish have been hunkered down, you know, in that winter mode for so long. They're wanting to get ready to spawn. And once that water gets to 54 and the increasing sunny days, they'll start moving into those shallow pockets, usually lily pad stem areas. I got a nice hard bottom. That's where they're going to start roaming into. And what I like to do is I watch that water temperature and I watch the weather and I look at what's leading to it. And I mean, I've got some spots here at Darnell. When that water hits 54, my power poles are down and I'm lighting them up. But 54 is about the earliest. There's about zero action from 52 to 54. When it hits that 54, it's lights out. And then when it gets to 58, it's even better. And then obviously, you know, you start getting that spawn going. And they'll hit it all the way through, but I might change up some techniques then too as well. I love throwing a frog, you know, so if I get an opportunity to throw a frog and mix it with the swim jig, I feel like I got a good shot at winning a tournament.
Now, on swim jigs, and I'm still kind of stuck on the trailer part of it, are you mimicking, what do you mimic? Are you mimicking shad, bluegill, crawdads? What is your, what's your favorite way, thing to mimic?
Well, I mean, that I was kind of just going into early pre-spawn with that. So I usually go black and blue, green pumpkin, something like that to mimic. Really just anything moving by, some kind of a bait fish, brim. It doesn't really matter at that point. Now, as the water gets warmer, then I start thinking about what bait fish are present. You know, shad spawn's a big deal in a lot of tournaments, and that's usually that first 30 minutes, 40 minutes of daylight. And I start going to the solid white colors, you know. And even with the shad spawn, you'd think I'd want to go paddle trailer. I like using a white crawl trailer just to get as much vibration. I think it's almost like you got multiple bait fish on the surface at one time. You know, you got that skirt pumping and you got the crawls moving. It just mimics the action of a shad spawn. That's usually around 72-degree water in most of these lakes and kind of upwards. And that lasts for a good while. And then I start mimicking the bluegill, you know, as the bluegill starts spawning. And then I go back to a paddle trailer to mimic the bluegill, add a little chartreuse on the trailer, you know, stuff like that to make it feel like it's the right presentation for the situation. But shad spawn's one of the funnest. Now, that's a deal that I like to fish around boat docks, riprap. We got a lot of red clay banks out here, and any hard grass line, you just got to see it. You'll watch your eyes, you know, with your eyes, you'll watch and notice these bait fish flickering, and you usually see a lot of activity around it. And that's when solid white is really the only way to go.
We're talking to Fred Roumbanis. He's a 16-year tour pro. He's given us a clinic on swim jig fishing. Fred, you've got a swim jig project that's underway. Tell us a little bit about that. What's going on?
So many years ago, and if you went to YouTube, you'd see a video of this swim jig I had with another company called The Magician. And it really was a great deal. We parted ways, you know, a long time ago, and I kind of been using this jig for many years. So I'm re-releasing it, and I did it a little bit better than what we had in the past. We had an eagle claw hook in that thing, and now obviously the hook quality's gone way up. We've got UPS driver driving by. We've got Hayabusa, you know, as a sponsor, and so we're working closely with them. I love their hooks, so we got a Hayabusa hook on there. We got a great bait keeper, and the deal with this swim jig is it's got a horizontal eye tie. It's got the feature on the head allows it to really shake as you're reeling it in. So it causes the skirt to quiver, and then whatever trailer you put on it, you know, that it works wonders. So I've kind of a few of us, my close friends, we've had these. We pour them and we keep them to ourselves for a long time. We're bringing it back. You know, the whole idea, we're bringing it, and I'm so picky on bringing this thing to the market because I want it to be absolutely perfect. We basically call it the original gangster because it's what I threw way back in the day. But because 2020 has been kind of a gangster to everybody with COVID and everything else, it's kind of a perfect name releasing it here in 2020. And then of course you've got the 20s gangsters from, you know, a long time ago. So we're doing a little fun with it, but yeah, that's what it's going to be called. It's through Stanford Baits. It's same company that's making my frog for me. And it really does parallel that frog well. So a little 1-2 punch with the same company. And we'll be able to do some good co-branding with it. So I think everyone's going to really enjoy it. We got some awesome colors coming out. I really would love to show it, and I apologize not having it in front of you, but I don't want to show it prematurely. I want you guys to see how awesome it is. And it's sweet, guys. I'm telling you, I've caught so many fish on it. And I mean, I rely on it. I've relied on it for years, and to have it with the right hook, it's phenomenal. And we're going to have we're going to have 2 models. We're going to do like an HD model, which will have actually a fluorocarbon weed guard to it, with heavy fluorocarbon. And, you know, it makes it a little bit better in like that thicker cover. That fluorocarbon isn't as soft as your brush weed guards. So it'll really get through that stuff and without getting hung up. So I'm going to use that with a little heavier gauge hook as well. And then we're going to have the one that's going to be the general purpose gangster come out. So it's gonna be fun. It's a fun project, and it's literally just a couple weeks out from hitting the market. So
very cool, very cool. You know, I wanted to ask you one more swim jig question. You know, you got spinner baits, you got bladed jigs, and you got swim jigs. How does somebody know when to throw which?
Well, I can tell you the swim jig's probably going to be your most subtle technique of the 3. Spinnerbait, you know, you gotta have a line to throw a spinnerbait in. Yes, you can throw it through reeds and you can throw it along grass lines, but a swim jig you can throw into the grass. And what I like about the swim jig is you can actually reel it into the grass, crash it, like what fires up a bass. If you ever watch them feed on brim or whatever, if you're just reeling in a bait, sometimes I'll just let it go by. The moment you crash that bait, if you're working a square bill and bump a stump or whatever, a swim jig you can literally reel it into a clump of grass and kill it. And it looks like a bluegill's trying to flee into that grass, and it triggers bites. So I think there's a lot more you can do with a swim jig versus a spinnerbait. Yeah, you can shake the blades on a spinnerbait, but you just can't get it into that same kind of cover without getting you know, the blades hung up and stuff. So if it's windy, I'd say you'd probably want to go with a spinnerbait or a bladed jig. A bladed jig's kind of been the all-purpose cover water, but you're going to cover more depth with a bladed jig. If I'm fishing and the grass is under the water, you know, even 1.5 to 2 foot, I might pick up a bladed jig first because it'll really track along the top of that grass or on the edge of it. If the grass is on the surface, that's when you're going to want to pick up that swim jig.
You're representing the United States at the International Bass Fishing Championships. Tell us, what's that all about?
You know, it's pretty cool. I've been on the team for a few years now, and this year we had to cancel the event all across the country, obviously because of COVID. But basically, there are 19, I believe, participating countries. There might be more now, but we're basically trying to make bass fishing an Olympic sport. I mean, that's truly the goal in mind. You know, we're self-funded. We fished in South Africa a couple of years ago. We got a silver medal there. We went to Mexico 2 years ago, and we've got the gold medal. Last year, we couldn't do anything because the event kind of lined up with all of our touring tournaments. So we had some other anglers kind of fill in for us. Not really sure how they did on that one, but we're going to Lake Murray next year. It was supposed to be this November, but because of everything that went down across the world, you know, with COVID, they postponed it. So next year we're going to Lake Murray, and we're going to represent there. And that's a lake I like. You know, I've won there. I won a major league day there, and I've won an elite there, and I've led another elite there. So it's a lake that I'm pretty excited to go fish. And they like a frog and a swim jig, so it should be fun.
What's the level of fishing, bass fishing in other countries? What are the other competitors like? Are they good or?
Yeah, it's incredible how good they are. You know, it's funny because like Germany, for instance, they got a team. They don't have bass in Germany, so they travel out here. You know, they fish all over where they do have bass, and it's incredible how good they are. You know, it's amazing for a couple of reasons. It's amazing. You know, one, it's a passion that we're all tied in, whether you're from here, you know, Japan or Australia or, you know, South Africa. So we all have that tie together. So when we all get together, we're all friends immediately. It's crazy. But then, you know, we're fierce competitors as well. But to see their skill level. I mean, some of the stuff they've got, I'm like, where'd you find this at? You know, I've never seen this lure before. So they've got a lot of different techniques, and it's fun. It's fun to watch. You know, I think there's world-class fishermen in all the countries, and you know, it's not something that's going to be handed to us by any means. We are going to have to catch them. We went to Mexico last year. We really didn't have a great practice, and fortunately, we sent David Fritz off throwing a crankbait the whole time during his practice. James Watson and I, you know, and I drove my boat and truck down. We banged the bank and flipped, and we realized that wasn't the deal. And you know, I was fortunate enough to have Garmin Live Scope in that deal. One of the few. Scott Martin had it in his boat as well. And I kind of went off a little further out than where Fritz was, and I saw some action on my Live Scope, and I started bombing a 10XD, and in minutes I had over 30 pounds of bass. And so we called in the other team. We called in the other teams, and we ultimately won the gold medal on that spot. So that was a really cool deal, but we had to find that during the event. It wasn't something we found in practice. So, you know, I'll pat myself on the back a little bit because I feel like I was a huge help on that one. But when we got the silver medal, James Watson flipped a 6-pounder in the Vol River, which that place just doesn't have big fish. You know, South Africa's got a lot of big bass. I fished down there 10 years prior and went to different lakes and caught huge fish. But for whatever reason, that river's got a lot of small ones. And when he flipped the 6-pounder, it was like we went from 0 to hero and took the silver medal. So all of us have our strengths. You know, Scott Martin's our team captain, and you know, he's probably the most accomplished angler on our team, and you know, he's got a huge media following as well. So he's great there. We've got such an amazing team. Mark Rose, you know how many FLWs he's won. We've got David Dudley, I think he's the all-time money winner on the FLW tour. Jacob Wheeler's now on the team. But yeah, we've got, let's see who else we got. Scott Canterbury took Angler of the Year last year in the elites. And I apologize if I'm leaving anybody out, but we've got David Fritz again, you know, his crankbait skills, you know, they got me on there more for the swim baits and frogs and topwater, you know. But I feel like I'm pretty versatile. I'm not, you know, we just got a great team, and it's fun. So I'm looking forward to it.
Hey, I noticed your name in the Toyota Series. Are you looking to qualify for the FLW Tour next year, or what are you going to be doing next season?
You know, I'll be honest with you. I wasn't really planning on fishing the Toyota Series this year, but with COVID cutting our season a little short and the opportunity to have a tournament in my backyard here at Lake Darnell, I wasn't going to turn that up. And it's a great organization. I love fishing the FLW, so I jumped in them. Their championship, I think, is for like $200,000. So I'm sitting decent in the points. I'm gonna go ahead and finish it up at Table Rock here in a couple of weeks. But as far as qualifying the FLW, actually, we've got the invite prior to this, and they're changing the name to the Big Five. I'm not sure if you're aware, but it's going to be under the Major League Fishing Shield, all the way down to high school events. So there will no longer be a FLW. It is now all Major League Fishing, which I think is smart because it gives the grassroots level an opportunity to make it all the way to the Bass Pro Tour, which I fish, and then the Cup events as well. My only dilemma right now is I got to book a private plane from Table Rock to Destination X. I probably shouldn't say where, but I got a Cup event, and I'm fishing the very next day in a very it's a 17-hour drive from where I'm fishing. Don't know what lakes I'm fishing, but it's a long ways away. And yeah, I don't know how I'm going to pull that off, but I don't want to if I don't make the final day, I could make the drive, no problem. But I think I'm just going to book a flight. I don't know what I'm doing. We'll figure it out. Figure it out when it happens. But we're gonna make it to that Cup event, and we're gonna try to make that championship. So we're sitting like 25th in the points. I think 25 go. So I'm kind of on the bubble. Hey, one thing, if you've got an extra minute, I really didn't go over like rod and reel with the swim jig.
Yeah, we should talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, just a couple of things. You know, if I'm fishing open water, I'm fishing boat docks, stuff like that, I like to go with a fluorocarbon, 17, 20-pound fluorocarbon, something a little bit less stretch but invisible, and something I can skip up underneath stuff pretty well. If I'm fishing a shallow grass, I use 40 to 50-pound braided line, use the Cortland braided line. It's the same line I use for frog fishing. And then on the rod, I'm with Dobbins rods now, and I use it's a 7 foot, it's 7 foot. It's a 4-power. Instead of I use a 6-power for frog, and it's a 4-power. So I back off. It's a little bit softer and allows me to kind of work that bait with the rod tip. Because that's the whole deal, is you want to make that bait dance as much as you can. So you don't want to have too stiff of a rod. And then of course braided line on that. So you're gonna hook them at whatever distance you cast. And then on the reels, I'm using 6 gill, and I like to use a pretty fast retrieve, 7-2-1, or even an 8-0 on the retrieve. Real shallow, skinny water, I go with the 8-0 if I'm backing off a little bit and not having to make those super long casts. Because the thing is, when they hit that swim jig, even with braided line, they're going to run towards you faster than you could possibly reel. So having the fastest retrieve and a little bit longer rod is always good on those long casts. So, and that skinny water.
Yeah, that's good information. Thanks for sharing that with us. All right. You got anything else?
Let's not do this every 17 years. Let's bring it. Last time we talked, I was at Okeechobee. I don't know if you remember this. I was at Okeechobee, and I was leaning over the side of the boat, and I heard something hissing at me. It was a giant alligator. And to this day, I remember it was like 5 feet from me, and it was hissing and had this huge mouth. And that was the first time I ever seen a gator. And I almost threw my phone in the water. So we've come a long way since then. And I've enjoyed the entire journey, and I appreciate you being there from day one.
Thanks a lot, Fred. We'll talk to you soon. I promise.
All right.
All right.
See ya.